On that subject, obviously with social networking, information has never been so much exposed. To recall one of my own experiences, drunken night out, tagged in some photos on Facebook, the mum saw, bit tragic. Have you guys had any experiences, like good or bad, on Facebook?
I've had loads of good experiences. I worked as a tour leader, which is when I really started using Facebook. And so I've got something like 900 friends who are all my guests on the tour. So I've been able to stay in touch with people. I've been able to see the pictures. Some of them I can't actually remember who they are anymore, and they're still on my Facebook. But I mean, it's been great just to see stuff. And I mean, that is like where you were saying with the de-tagging, that can actually be a bit of a worry because you've got no control over pictures that other people put up of you. But we say that's all part of digital literacy. If someone says, can you take it down, then you take it down. So it's part.
I think sometimes you get problems with that though, because for example, I saw a picture of myself and it wasn't tagged, but I was looking through somebody else's album, and that's, I mean, it's so easy to access from a night out. And I was like, oh God, I'm glad they didn't tag it. But actually, it's still on the web for people to see. Whether if I hadn't have been looking, would I have found that picture of myself? Probably not.
Yeah, it's definitely worrying.
So that can be a bit worrying.
At my age, you don't have nights out, so it doesn't matter. But I suppose for me, the issue has been a little bit different, which is that I'm very open that I will befriend any student, for instance, who simply asks it. I got no filter. But I do sometimes find that interesting. I think it's curious how often students seem to post stuff almost with an unawareness that it's there forever, so to speak. The
whole world can see.
And that, well, at least their friends can see it. And again, you sometimes wonder, therefore, why are they actually posting it? Is it to send a message? Is it to cry for help? Is it a personal statement? All of those things.
Well, advocates of social networking, of course, would say it's brought people closer together. But there's a lot of people who believe it has, in a way, made people, in many ways, more antisocial, the couch potato, so to speak. Which notion would you agree with? What side of the debate would you be on?
See, I use the phrase sort of hyper-local quite often when I'm talking about social networking. So I use Twitter particularly as a news feed. This weekend I'm giving a talk at a conference about new media. I'm just about to meet probably about 30 people that I know on Twitter who I've never met face-to-face. So for me, I've got to know them online, and then I'm going to get to meet them face-to-face, and that will kind of deepen the interactions I've got. So I see it very much as kind of, I've got an online life and an offline life, and the two work together rather than becoming an online hermit.
Yeah, certainly. Alistair?
Well, it's interesting. I mean, there are arguments that for a variety of reasons, and again, that the United States has this tendency, rather more than we do at the moment, that people have become increasingly isolated, that we all live relatively hermetic or sealed lives. But I would agree, the idea of us all sitting in our little sort of silos, busily having communications with each other, but never actually physically meeting, I think you'll probably find it's quite weird to meet people who you know. And of course that used to exist with email, but it was just a name. You didn't know the person, but you knew the name. Now you know what they look like. You could recognize them in a room. But I think there's still something probably very visceral about meeting somebody bodily.
It's almost like an online evolution.
Being in a physical presence is different.
Yeah, certainly. Well, finally, the internet has obviously emerged as a pivotal business tool. But over the years, a lot of top search engines, for example, like Ask Jeeves and Yahoo, have lost a lot of their popularity with Google coming on the scene. Do you think we'll still be having this conversation in 10 years' time? Does Facebook have the legs to keep on going, or will something replace it ultimately? Do you guys think Facebook is here to stay, or a fad?
I think it's here forever.
I don't know. I think I'd say the other way round, because we had things like MySpace before and that faded out. Facebook overtook it. So what's to say that in a few years' time Facebook won't fade out and something else will be available as a social networking site? I think the social networking site, the concept of it will still be around though.
Yeah.
I think it depends how much Facebook evolves, and they are constantly evolving, which I think sites like Friends Reunited, they evolved too late. MySpace didn't pick up on it too late. So it depends how much they keep going with what people are demanding. And the thing with Facebook is it's bigger than any of the others, and people have invested hours of their time uploading photos, tagging photos, and I'm just wondering how much impact that's going to have for people, but then you had the, 6 months ago, lots of people
I think the opposite.
leaving.
I think the more they evolve it, the more likely it is to die off.
Okay.
I think the more elaborate it becomes, it will have the phenomena that MySpace did. It will simply become too involved with itself. I think if Facebook remains as open and as simple as it currently is, in which effectively you don't have to play the games, you don't have to get involved in any of the peripheral activities. If the core thing that you can do, which is to post things about yourself to the world, is allowed to remain uncomplicated, I can't see how it will go away. And effectively, the question then is, will they be able to fend off their competitors? And they have such a lead on any competitor that it's difficult to see how anyone could sort of catch them.
You mentioned about Facebook obviously maintaining its core values to post, etc. Obviously now with Facebook you can milk cows on a farm.
I'd never bother with any of that.
Would you say that Twitter's popularity might be a backlash to Facebook in that it's just the core values of social networking? You post what you're up to, there's none of the photos, none of the hungover pictures. Do you think Twitter is more of an alternative, or?
I think the core question for Twitter will be whether it too seeks to elaborate itself. Because if they start to allow you to post pictures and post video instead of just text, I think Twitter will lose its sort of relative uniqueness.
Yeah.
And then it will lose, well, it doesn't really have a market share in a sense, it's not measured in that way, but it will lose its usefulness to people.
Yeah.
And people use it presumably because they find it useful.
Yeah, it's a massive live stream, Twitter, so you see what's going on. But the thing is, if people only tweet about what they've had for breakfast or they've had a coffee, you don't get very far with it. It's more about kind of sharing the expertise, like you were talking about, between the student unions.
Yeah.
It's the only thing that I think it really lacks is the interaction.
Yeah.
And like we said before, sometimes that's really positive.
Yeah.
But it's nice to know when celebrities have sort of thrown up or something.
Yeah.
It's what its chief purpose is, as far as I know.
Yeah. 50 Cent's new beef victim.
Exactly. Yes.
See, I don't use it for that. I've been using it extensively recently to get guest posters for my blog. So I've got a blog where I say to people, will you write a guest post for my blog? Because I'm already interested in what they've been writing on Twitter. And say, would you like more than 140 characters to talk about?
We could talk about blogs in the next session. Then.
Yeah.
Okay, right. Well, thank you very much for your time, guys. Sadly, that's all we've got time for. And stay tuned to the features section of Winchester News Online for my very own article on the rise in social networking. And stay tuned to Winol for the best student journalism around.